Hello, everybody. So today's episode is titled Parents Just Don't Understand Sometimes. And I think that might be even a stretch, giving it a little too much credit. But I don't mean that in a bad way or a spiteful way. But what I'm trying to get at is, parents' expectations in youth baseball and, even amateur and professionally, I guess. Parents are parents, and that's the bottom line. And I respect that, number one. A lot of people, it's easy for people to say, but Cappy, you don't have kids. And I don't. But it's a little unfair to say, well, Cappy, you don't know what it's like. It's not your own kid out there. I get it. I'm not stupid. I understand. It's your kid. It's your world. It's the most important thing in your life. I get it. I agree with it. It should be, right? But what happens when parents, go out into the real baseball world or the real thing where they're out there with, their kids on a team now, and just everything gets out of whack. Expectations, reality. We sit down at a game and we just put our blinders on, and it's just all about you and your kid. And that's interesting because, like I just said, the only thing that matters is your kid. And I've told parents that I train their kid that the world revolves around your kid, in the sense that you shouldn't care about anybody else's kid. It's not your business. And I think what happens is, for example, what I know to be true based on experience is that there's this group of parents, and this goes for everything. This is not a specific group of parents. This is parents at any level in youth baseball. Is they're in the stands and they're rooting against other kids, whether they're 6-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds. They're rooting against other kids on the team because they sense fear that kid might be better than their kid. Or they don't want to see that kid do well because it might impose on their kid. So what happens is you have these group of parents in the stands on a certain team, and everybody's rooting against everybody because all anybody cares about is their kid. Well, the reality is, and again, it comes down to mathematics, right? There's only a certain amount of kids that can play, and then the rest of the kids aren't playing, and the whole playing time thing. Why is my kid not playing? Okay, the reality is probably because he's not good enough. So I think I just struck a nerve there, right? So probably because he's not good enough, okay? So, and again, this is, I don't want to come off harsh or whatever, but, I've made my business the last, several years on being brutally honest. I respect that term, brutally honest. And I think if you're honest with parents and you're honest with, people, that they'll start to get it. They'll get it more than they normally would. And when parents can't accept honesty, honest opinion, again, because remember, in a lot of cases, you're paying for someone's professional opinion. In my case, right? It's not in my best interest to sugarcoat things or tell somebody what they're not. It's in my best interest to tell them where they're at, be honest with them, and then progress through that process of player development, which was, the first episode we talked about player development. But here we're talking more about just unrealistic expectations, from the parent and how they deal with it on a day-to-day basis, right? Well, parents don't want to go to practice. Parents don't want to force their kid out of the house to train. Parents don't want to kick their kid off the couch, out of the bedroom, and go train and go work out. Parents don't want to force their kid to eat healthy and have nutrition a big impact in their life. Parents don't want to do that, right? But what parents want to do is show up at the game and complain. And, that's a big problem right now in youth amateur sport. And, again, the point of this is not to offend anybody or to get anybody riled up. It's to simply shed light on the reality. The best reality television right now is parents that are misunderstood, and maybe I shouldn't say misunderstood, but just, for lack of better words, crazy sport parents, And here's what I've come up with, right? My own personal research is, it's your kid. It's your world. I get it. It should be. Everything should revolve around your kid, right? That's the reality of it. That's life. That's what a lot of people say, right? That's what life's all about. So, from birth till 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, up to 18, right? These kids are in your house. They're under your control. They're everything. They're your life. They're everything. Okay? And I won't lower myself to get into anything else other than baseball. I'm speaking specifically youth baseball, right? So if you've got something to say or I've offended anybody, we're talking youth baseball here, okay? Now, what I would like to see is the separation when you get to the field of reality. Because what might go on and how important your child is to you, and then when we get to the baseball park, think about it. Can you separate reality from what might not be reality? And that's the world that we're living in when we're not at the baseball field. Right? Because it's not a good environment for anybody. It's not a good environment for anybody. Your child, you, nobody wins at this if the parent is half crazy. And I don't mean literally, because I'm not calling you crazy, but I'm calling your beliefs in and around the baseball field with your child on the team, whether he's playing or not. And I think, that's the reality of where we're at right now. Don't maybe get into just how human nature is and the protection of people. And I get it. Right? Your kid's the best. Okay? And then right there, you would stop me and say, no, not really. But that's what you think. Right? So it's really hard for me to talk so passionately about this, because I feel like I'm stepping on toes and stuff, and maybe even hurting people's feelings. But I think that's what needs to be done to have them realize, what it's all about, and how misled they may be in their journey of what a lot of people make it their life to raise some prospective baseball player, which is, which is ridiculous, and how people react to coaches' decisions or why my kid's not playing. He should be playing. My kid's better than that kid. And now we're rooting against everybody on the field but your kid. And that's a sad, sad existence, you know. That's not beneficial for anybody. Because when your kid gets in the car and has to go home, you're just bombarding him with sad stuff again, right? So I like to say communication solves almost the entirety of the problem is communication. And if you can communicate with somebody your vision, your goals, your expectations, or whatever, and everybody's on the same page, then you nip a lot of, problems before they happen. And expectations become realistic. So, and part of that is, a coach's responsibility as well, a trainer, a teacher. That's their responsibility as well. But so it's very interesting, this dynamic of parents that they only want the best. I agree. And a lot of parents have said, I just want the best. Yeah. Well, then stop trying to manipulate every second of the playing career and then manipulate everybody else around your kid's career as well, because it just doesn't work out like that. And I think that's important to understand. The focus should be on getting your kid better at baseball. Yet, the focus becomes, what's happening at the game. Recently I put on my Instagram account about a famous basketball player, Shane Battier from Duke, and he's played 10 plus years in the NBA, won a couple world championships, and he made it a point to say something along the lines of, my job is to make sure I play so well that the coach can't sit me. He's got to play me. And I thought that was cool. But you can take it a step further and say that you've got to earn the right to play in practice as well. And I commented at how most teams are going to practice at least twice as much as they're going to play, right? So when you think about it, again, baseball speaking, if your team plays 2 to 3 times a week on the amateur level or whatever, they're probably practicing 3 or 4 times a week. Or if they're playing once or twice, they're practicing 3 or 4 times a week. So they're over the course of a season, they're practicing more than they play. And that should be true. That should be true in Little League and high school. And, it's really true up until professionally where, these guys are playing 150 plus games a year. And you're expected to act like a professional then, not, you're not expected to act like a professional when you're 8, right? So a lot of parents, like I said, they like to show up at the games, but they're not behind the scenes. They don't see what goes on at practice. And that's important because I always tell players that you're going to make your way in practice, in extra workouts, in voluntary workouts. Just FYI, if a coach says it's voluntary, he's waiting for people not to show up. And he's waiting to mark down the kids that do show up. And those kids become the kids that are recognized for being disciplined, dedicated, and so on, right? And do coaches have their favorites? Listen, don't be naive to think that coaches don't have favorites, but it's usually, if you're a good coach, it revolves around the dedication and discipline of the player and what they bring to the table. and their commitment and their drive and how hard they go and how hard they work and their presence. Some people don't show up for practice, and then it's everybody else's fault when they don't play in the game, right? So it's very shallow for a parent to not see the big picture and not to see what coaches might base their opinions off of. You want to see the big picture. And, again, the point of this is not to be slamming parents, but I've been around long enough now, and I feel like I'm qualified to comment on this. And it's all I've done recently is deal with parents and work with their kids. And I realize that it's in my best interest to be honest and brutally honest, and I have no problem with sharing with parents that ask my opinion. Because every time someone asks me about their kid, before I open my mouth, I go, all right, you better be right. You better be right. I don't say, you better, hold on, let me rearrange what I'm about to say to make them happy. All I think about is just, I better be right on what I'm about to say, because it might get ugly and it might be brutally honest and the truth, and it might be something they've never heard before. But you owe it to them to tell them. And two things can happen. They can go, well, screw you, you're crazy, and then that person ends up sleepwalking through their whole kid's career, begging for somebody to tell them what they want to hear. And it never happens. And then, who knows what happens to some of these parents that spend their whole life complaining that their kid's not getting their due. And then, then their kid's retired from the sport. And then I don't know what happens after that. But it's a sad thing to have somebody with those perceptions and values. So I urge parents to I'm not asking for people to stay out of it. No, get involved. Get more involved, but get more informed. Get informed. When I say parents just don't understand, I mean because they're not informed. When you allow yourself and when you open yourself up to information and feedback, expert advice, now we're talking, and you can't swallow that, or you can't understand that, or you can't deal with that, then it's no longer anybody else's problem. It's your problem, right? Don't maybe get into the fact that, how would you feel if someone came to your job and told you how to do it, or told you what you should think of certain things? And by the way, they don't know anything about your job. And, I'm not talking today, to parents that used to play high-level baseball at the high school or college level or professionally, right? Because that person would know better. And it's funny when someone like myself gets a lot of feedback from parents. It's entertaining because it's normally way off base. And trust me, I don't mean this to undermine anybody. It should be off base because you're not a professional baseball instructor or trainer or teacher or coach. So it is going to sound off base to me. And that's the part of why I'm talking today about it, is because I think it's a big problem in youth baseball. And as the kids get older, it doesn't make it any easier on you or them. And I think the overall message is to, sit back, support, give your son all the resources he needs, go out of your way to provide that, And not necessarily whatever happens, but most likely you're not going to affect positively your kid's baseball career. Okay? Because you don't have the experience or expertise to do so. So it's, now, if you're not going to give him the resources, or you're not going to care about his practice, and you're not going to care about his training and his weaknesses and what he needs to improve on, well, then you're just out of line, okay? And your days are numbered. But if you're going to support it, you're going to seek advice, training, you're going to seek feedback, you're going to expose weaknesses, you're going to get your kid the training, and even after all that, if it's still not there, you're able to deal with it and still support. At the end of the day, this is like a super small sliver of your kid's, what's going to be his life, right? And that's what you end up caring about. So I don't know the percentages, whether it's 1% or 3% or whatever, but the kids going on to play in college is a super small percent. The kids going on to play professional baseball is like, you might not even ever seen a kid yet in all your years of watching your kid play on any team that is going to play professionally. You might not even ever have even seen that. So at the end of the day, your kid's going to be graduating high school, and he's probably going to become a really good, cool dude with, go get educated and become a great professional and make a great living and raise his own family and be awesome. But do you really want to look back and say how overbearing and miserable you were, when he was in Little League or club ball or high school ball? I mean, it's just simply not worth it. So step back, take a deep breath, and support. Don't go against the grain. Quit going against the grain, against the current. That's the hard way. Throw your support behind it and go with it. And everything will be easier and will get smoothed out sooner. And you'll get the feedback you need. If you're not willing to deal with the feedback you're getting from whoever's making the calls, you can honestly say that's not their problem, it's yours. Right? So, I know we've kind of gotten into it a little bit today, and I've already mentioned this. Parents are what make the world go round, and I understand that. And I've trained kids at all levels: Little League, high school, college, professional. And I've never had the kid pay me. It's always been the parent. So I know what's important, and I know who pays the bills. But I also know that there's this, big problem with parents' perception and understanding of their kids' youth and amateur baseball career. And I think we covered a lot of it. And I just want to help. I'm not doing this. I'm not taking my time out. I'm not trying to get anything out of this other than to educate and inform, and hopefully have parents, learn something. And if they can go about, their way a little better, it's only going to enhance their kids' experience and their own. Okay, so that's all I got.